If you're hearing this audio recording, then I regret to inform you that I have perished under the weight of my own salt. On the weekend before PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X launched, I came into contact with a life-draining artifact known as the Assassin's Creed. Many times have I encountered it, and many times I dismissed it. I knew not of its power before now. After days of fatigue, apathy, and pitiful laughter, I'm afraid my salt has finally caught up with me. I fear this might be the end.
Is that all?
Nah, I'm kidding. You can't get rid of me that easily. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen of the internet. My name is Ty with MojoPlays, and this is my review of Assassin Creed Valhalla. And hoo boy, are we in for a ride.
Hearken well in Hall of Kings.
Before we begin, we publish new content all week long, so be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos.
In case you aren't familiar with my gaming habits or the games I rave about on Twitter, which if you haven't followed me yet, you probably should, I only play AAA titles if I absolutely admire almost everything. After all, $60 is a lot of money, and these are typically games with bigger budgets, more cogs to the machine, more manpower to make sure everything is working as intended. Although these days, it also tells me I might be buying something that is more product than passion. Come on, if I'm being asked for 40 plus hours of my time, I expect consistency. I expect a well thought out narrative with evolving character arcs, an exciting combat system that keeps teaching me new things, and has a clear, simple focus on what it wants to do. And it has to not run like it's functioning off a moldy potato. Really, would you play a game that long if it was a technical mess, had a dull combat system, and wasted your time with absurd design choices? Well, I surely did. Besides, Assassin's Creed is all YouTube wants to talk about outside of the new consoles, and we gotta keep Ricky fed before we drag him from the basement for more voiceovers.
Use your cloak to obscure your face. Blend into the crowd. Divert attention. Hide in plain sight.
So here we are with Assassin's Creed Valhalla, the umpteenth entry in Ubisoft's historical fiction gone science fiction gone cookie cutter open world formula to use in 20 other games. Here you take the role of Eivor, a Viking who is supposedly some sort of demigod given how they survived getting their neck chewed out by a wolf as a youngin'. Having been kicked out of Norway by another faction of Vikings, you and your brother Sigurd must rebuild the settlement while raiding villages and assassinating Templar leaders. Gather materials to upgrade shops, customize your warship, improve your equipment, raid a village, fight off guards, open chests with a mate, watch this cutscene, you have new skill points, stealth kill this dude, tell the story, recruit online players, stealth kill that dude, look at this empty hand, bird with gifts, guy on my head, practice flighting, play this dice game. Alright. Okay, we're already off to a bad start with this overwhelming gameplay loop, but I have a list of complaints about as long as Ubisoft's usual chore list in games like this. Where do I even begin?
The others have arrived. Come.
Look, I'd be fine with a game that had a medium amount of content, but when it's something this formulaic and uninspiring, that's where I lose my patience. That's when I start thinking about all of the games that I've played before, and how those titles made the open world formula their own in a variety of ways. The previous Assassin's Creed games included before Origins and before Odyssey. Now, I'm usually not about comparing games in my reviews, but here it's almost unavoidable given how many things are wrong with Valhalla. Last year, I reviewed Ghost Recon Breakpoint, and upon playing Valhalla, I kept asking myself if I was playing a Viking version of Breakpoint. If that doesn't tell you how unrecognizable Assassin's Creed has become, I don't know what will. Let's move forward with the most inoffensive item, the story. Personally, I wasn't all that invested in Eivor and just about every other beard and braid that crossed the screen. Cutscenes and dialogue would go on for so long that it felt like I've spent more time watching the game than playing it. If I wanted to watch a movie or a TV show, I'd go do just that! Of course, my sworn enemy, the Animus, which has ruined several experiences of Assassin's Creed with me, has got to rear its ugly head into the story, effectively killing the pacing and all immersion I would have in my Viking fantasy. God forbid we retcon the futuristic story of the Animus. Not all that surprising since that's how it's killed Black Flag for me. Goodbye pirate adventure and hello office worker playing VR.
We give awards to our top-notch employees for doing quality work, and they're nice to have since there's no official bonus scheme here.
I do have to give props to whoever came up with the side missions, though. Surprisingly, Valhalla borrows a philosophy frequently used by the Yakuza franchise, which provides a main campaign centered on a dramatic and intense story, but lightens the mood with absurd and hilarious side missions. I also appreciate some of the more fantasy elements that piqued my interest, such as the ominous cursed tree that looks straight out of the mind of Edgar Allan Poe. Still, with most of the effort gone into Valhalla's world, and not so much the main story, it feels like Disney World had new flowers planted to distract me from a faded Cinderella castle.
Shades of Valhalla, for which you are destined.
Speaking of faded, I thought prompts to hold down buttons was a faded memory. Imagine my surprise when Valhalla demanded I hold a button for almost every single damn action. I'm not kidding! The triangle button is used as a basic context-sensitive input, meaning that the button is centered around doing a variety of things. Hold triangle to break down doors, hold triangle to unlock chests, hold triangle to carry corpses, and trust me, you'll be doing a lot of that, which annoyed me to no end. I'm someone who wants the thing done as soon as possible. If there's a simple connection, go with the simple connection. Why can't I simply press the button and be on my way? Why must I sit through a gauge that has to confirm my action before doing the action and forcing me to sit through something overly animated? Just open the damn chest! Let me bust down the door with my obviously capable axe and flail. Just do the thing. That's all I ask.
Give me a hand over here!
Sorry if it seems like I'm making manure out of magpies, but considering how often I had to sit through these hold prompts and indulgent animations, I felt like a lot of time was being wasted between time of button press and task completion. Adding to my frustration was the fact that actions like breaking down doors or opening large chests is impossible to do without the quote-unquote help of an AI. So if all of your guys are on axe dates with the enemy, or focusing on torching buildings, you ain't getting crap. Hit the road, Jack, and don't you come back till your crew has nothing better to do. Perhaps it is my lack of control over the crew that irritates me, but the little control I do have is just as frustrating and occasionally laughable. Eivor's general movement is fine overall, dodging feels alright, climbing things isn't as much of a hassle as they were in AC2 and Black Flag, and parkouring across structures feels fluid, when it works. There were a handful of times where Eivor was jumping farther than I wanted, thus missing an attack, or jumped to some other portion of a structure. I told you to climb up, not jump across the window, you dolt! It's also worth mentioning that Eivor's realistic animations can make it realistically frustrating to move around enclosed spaces. If there is one thing Eivor can do correctly, it's combat. However, I can't even give Eivor the credit because the AI is so insipidly stupid. Originally, I was playing the game on its default settings, that is, until I noticed the enemies weren't exactly doing anything to challenge me. Despite cranking the difficulty to max, nothing changed. Nothing but attack output. Some enemies would focus more on my crew, others would watch me chip away at their health wondering when I'd stop and offer them some gummy bears. The most shocking part of Valhalla's combat is just how easily exploitable it is. If they weren't equipped with a bow, the AI would just charge at me and utilize one of two attacks. A horizontal swing that takes forever to land, and a vertical swing that takes forever to land. Here's the problem. A simple parry or two is enough to insta-kill just about anybody with a stun attack. That is, if their power level doesn't significantly exceed yours. That's another thing. Power levels. I cannot stand how common the use of power levels has become in AAA games. To me, power levels are a very lazy way of adjusting your game's difficulty. They void any significance of armor and weapons by generalizing their effectiveness down to a number, they make it pointless to iron out a playstyle to call your own, and it forces the player to grind even more just so they aren't being gate-kept out of parts of the game. In other words, it's like attaching a score to a review. I wasn't crazy about it with God of War, I didn't like it in South Park: The Fractured But Whole, and I certainly didn't appreciate it being here. Valhalla's power level system repeats the very problems I have mentioned with previous ones, and with an AI too idiotic to defend themselves and diversify their attacks, it only adds to the glaring laziness on display. I would have been more forgiving of this had the combat been fleshed out more, had I been given more than just a few insanely powerful abilities like a guided arrow or auto-targeting. Instead, I'm a power level 26 trying to actively avoid camps with triple-digit power levels. So that's fun. In between the fighting and monotonous power fantasy, I did find some enjoyment out of the sailing aspect, a feature very heavily borrowed from Black Flag, albeit no cannons and nautical warfare. There are plenty of moments in Valhalla where you'll set sail with your crew and raid whatever settlements you spot. During your travels, you can listen to Viking songs or stories of your crew's previous adventures, and if you have a longer journey, you can enter a cinematic mode and watch them travel. It was nice to have a breather between overlong cutscenes and hold button prompts, but it would be more pleasant to experience had the game been better optimized. Yes, here is the part where I started questioning my own sanity. Much like Ghost Recon Breakpoint, much like The Division, Assassin's Creed Unity, and even damn Monopoly, Assassin's Creed Valhalla has been released in a buggy state. I cannot tell you how many times I saw objects still being rendered while standing next to them. Frames drop about as frequently as rambunctious toddlers running around an art museum unsupervised. Textures have glaringly visible outlines and look like they were ripped from an old N64 game. Parts of the world may even pop in and out at random times. And my god, the animations. Holy shit, the animations. The most hilariously awful moment came during my initial moments in exile when one character model forgot how to exist and became my own personal toy.
We all float down here. You'll float too.
Seriously, I have fewer fingers and toes than the number of times I saw character animations bugging out, AI failing to execute commands, or encountered a sliding character model. Oh wait, the third arm just grew out. Yeah, it's still fewer. And do I even waste my breath about the absurd level of monetization? A map to instantly show the location of all gear? Skins for horses and ravens? What's even the point? This isn't the only problem carried over from Ghost Recon Breakpoint either. When I reviewed Breakpoint over a year ago, I came across an alarming flaw post-review. Should you die at a base, you will be forced to redo your entire conquest regardless of if you've eliminated all or most enemies. The same issue occurs in Valhalla. Upon finishing a raid, a random enemy spawned in the settlement and killed me, and as soon as I respawned, I found that I had to redo the entire raid, meaning I had to sit through more hold button prompts, more waiting for allies to help me open doors, more of collecting the same stuff that I've collected before when I originally completed the raid, etc., etc., etc. So much time wasted. And that's the thing about Valhalla, is that it demands so much of my time, but respects none of it. If there is one thing Valhalla does accomplish, it's living the Viking fantasy. There's something really satisfying about barging onto shore like a jackass and blowing your horn, notifying any unsuspecting villagers that their land is your new hellscape. It's like announcing how you're about to become the biggest nuisance and know there will be no repercussions. Improving settlements with the goods you've raided is also somewhat fulfilling. What better way to improve yourself than by pillaging folks simply going about their daily lives? But enough about capitalism. If there was anything I got out of Valhalla, it was an existential crisis. Maybe I'm just an old fart who remembers a time when games were simpler, a time when games weren't big for the sake of being big, a time when games were more focused and, didn't run like plastic water bottles in a blender. Considering we are just now entering the next generation of consoles, I fail to see why such inane design choices are being implemented in a 2020 game like Assassin's Creed Valhalla. The basic combat, the hold button prompts, power levels, requirement of an NPC's help to do simple actions like busting down a damn door.
Hey! Can't do this alone!
I was hoping this game would entice me to go and give Origins and Odyssey a chance, but it has only made me want to regress. At least Assassin's Creed 2, Brotherhood, and Revelations had a story to tell and had mechanics that distinguished themselves from other games at the time of their releases. Valhalla shouldn't need an old windbag like myself to tell it to get with the times. But no matter which way you spin that irony, one thing's for certain. We're both ghosts of a once thriving era of gaming.
Father, you should have held on to this until the bitter end.
Thanks for watching. Did you agree or disagree with my review? Be sure to leave a question or comment or criticism down in the comments below, and I may read them off in an upcoming review recap.